and I get the sense sometimes that we have felt it okay to have leaders who are shameless. Many of our leaders have a brass neck. Many of them are standing again the next general election, having brought the country to wreck and ruin, who are utterly shameless, and they need to feel a sense of shame. But just in terms of briefly address the issue of electoral reform, I agree completely with Jane that changing the PRS CV system certainly won't change our system of the political system. I think we need to also look at the whole notion of clientelism. We talk about clientelism in terms of the relationship between our politicians and our citizens or our constituents. When you talk to somebody with a good knowledge of some of our government departments, talk to quite a few political scientists, they talk about clientelism in terms of the relationship between civil servants very often and representatives of professional bodies, or of IBEC. IBEC is very often seen as a client of the Department of Enterprise. Our civil servants are very often looking after the interests of our professional classes, of certain sectors of the economy. And I think we need to look at that dynamic as well.
Thanks very much. I'm conscious that we're nearly 10 minutes over time, so Jim, I'm going to give you the last word, but with a question. Would you stand for election to the Dáil again in a new republic?
I would certainly give it, I'll give you a politician's answer, I would certainly give it a hell of a lot of consideration, yeah. I was probably naive going in the last time. I certainly found I was honoured to be elected. It is a wonderful honour to be entrusted by your own community to represent them. Of that there is no doubt, regardless of how sullied the name of politics is. But I think I'm glad you asked a question, because I think it's important, and it's not just important but appropriate that we're positive. Because I honestly believe minds have been concentrated in Ireland over the last couple of years to such an extent that gatherings such as this are taking place, and they would never have taken place during the excesses of the previous 10 years. And there are groups active, and we're all aware of different groups active in different areas in every aspect of life. And it's coming together very, very gradually. And I think one of the great byproducts of the current crisis is that a new Ireland is going to emerge. What form that new Ireland takes, I don't know. Whether it's a new republic or whatever label is put on it. But certainly there is a wonderful sense of renewal from people such as are here this evening, and there's a level of political discussion going on that certainly has, in my experience, hasn't been going on in such numbers before in Ireland, and I think that's wonderful. If I could just hit at a couple of quick points. I was very struck by the point in relation to education and the need to change the culture through education. But I think we should guard against making one mistake, and we have a former secretary of the INTO in the room. Education doesn't mean the 4-year-old kids in first class in primary school. Education is right up until the grave. And we shouldn't fall into that trap of just thinking, education, therefore we have to wait 30 years for it to come through. One of the most significant aspects of what's going on at the moment for me is that 2010 was the 40th free education leaving certificate class. It was an anniversary which went totally unheralded. But the first leaving certificate free education class, in other words, the class that had come the whole way through under free education, was 1971. 2010 was the 40th anniversary. And if you take it that that's 2 generations of the Irish people have benefited from free education. And if you look at your just reasonable lifespan age for voters aged 18 to 78, is about right. 60 years. 2/3 of our electorate now have come through the free education system. And yet we have a political system which is based largely on ignorance of the people and a lack of education among the people when those systems were designed in 1919 for the Dáil and in 1937 with the Constitution. And I think a lot of our problems over the last few years, by the three pillars of society that I mentioned, the church, politicians and the professions, they traded for all those years on the ignorance of a large proportion of the population. That ignorance is no more. We now have an educated population, and that's one of the reasons why we're in the mode we're in, for me. But I think it's important that we don't get hung up on education having to start at 4 years of age. Education can start at 94. Law enforcement, I would agree with our legal friend. It struck me last night looking at the reports of John Lennon's anniversary. The guy who shot him is still in jail 30 years on. Forget his name, but he's still away. Bernie Madoff was gone in, 6 months? We haven't even finished investigations yet. And finally, the Constitution. I personally believe the Constitution is very much a millstone around our neck, in that it was framed in a totally, utterly different era, and it was pitched towards a totally different Ireland. 75 years on, God, we have changed so much, and I think it is one of our difficulties. I'm going to finish. I'm going to read Theo Dorgan, if you don't mind. I'm sorry, I was totally taken by this, and I think it's a lovely note to finish on. I'm sorry, Justine, for intruding on you. There is an Ireland we have been ceaselessly imagining and reimagining for centuries. You can find elements of that Ireland in the thoughts and dreams of Redmond and Pearse, Wolfe Tone and Douglas Hyde. You can find it in the generous vision of James Connolly and the pragmatic vision of that greatest of civil servants, T.K. Whitaker. You can find it in the challenging presidencies of Mary Robinson and Mary McAleese, in the words and deeds of those who fought so trenchantly and fearlessly for the rights of women, the rights of so-called minorities, the rights of the dispossessed. You can find it in all those who subsumed doubt and difference in the act of faith that is the Belfast Agreement. You can find it in the words of our poets and writers, the visions of our artists, the soul-building songs and music of both the dead and the living generations. Many of us live fragments of that Ireland in our daily lives. Much of that Ireland we have already brought into being, but we have failed to imagine clearly enough the civic and political structures that will nurture and grow and guarantee our visions of the good. That's our task now. That is the task you face. If you are prepared, as I hope in my heart you are prepared, to accept the responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much. He writes some lovely poems as well. Maybe tonight the seeds are going to be sown for the second poets' revolution in Ireland. I want to say thank you to Jane, to John and to Jim. I found it really interesting. I hope you have. I think you're brilliant to come out considering the conditions. The good news is the ice is melting. I think the snow is practically gone, so it's getting better already. And thanks very much for coming, and safe home.
Thank you, folks. Just another small bit of good news. We're going to invite you to join us next door in the library bar for a few drinks if you have the time. But I'm going to beg your indulgence just for a few short moments. We've had the benefit of listening to our panelists, and I would like to ask for the benefit of just listening to yourselves. You see at the back of your packs there's an evaluation form, so we'd love just to hear some of your thoughts and feedback on how our session went. This is the third that we've done this autumn. The other two have been under the banner of It's Good to Know. We'll be planning other sessions come January, springtime, and the next new year, 2011. So it'd be good for us to, very helpful for us to think about what we can put together. So your feedback, a couple of questions there, just a few moments, that'd be great. Jim also mentioned earlier on that the use by politicians of slush funds for various different activities, which made me think about how we put this together, this event tonight, which unfortunately didn't have the benefit of a slush fund. We do get philanthropic support, we get support from our members, but it also, in having you here tonight, has been great support to bring us forward in our work. And it's also great if people are able to go, okay, these guys are a little bit interesting, I like what they're doing. So if you feel the urge or the inkling to think about maybe pulling out your checkbook or thinking about joining up as a member, we'd be delighted to hear from you. You'll see the back of your pack there, some more information about that. The other final thing is one big thank you. This event, which we've all enjoyed, I hope, was brought together by us as a team, but most importantly by one particular person standing at the back there, Rita Carlin, standing at the door, has done tremendous work.